Hello and welcome to Tyrants on the Field. As always, I'm your host, Joe. We've got a special one for you tonight. We are talking all about SR 2026 that has recently dropped. And by recently, I mean yesterday. It has dropped. You will be able to find it now on War Table as well, uh, with a bunch of new maps that friend of the show, Brad Park, has dropped. So please check those out, especially for those that are going to be playing in the Null team tournament and the Null February tournament. You may remember some of those maps that are now available. Other big news, Steamforge, as part of their update yesterday, have also dropped a brand new Discord specific to War Machine. So go ahead, check that out in the article on the Steamforge website. There's a link direct to that Discord. Get on in there, take advantage of that. That is where rules updates and such are going to live going forward. They're in the process of migrating everything over. So please check that out. The War Machine Discord, specifically now, all official and shiny and new, powered by Steamforge Games. Other reminder is that P3 paints are now readily available and are back in stock on the Steamforge website, along with being at many friendly local gaming stores. And if your friendly local gaming store does not have them, go ahead, chat up the powers that be and see what you can do to get them in. Without further ado, let's talk about SteamRoller. Beefy packet this time around. Gorgeous cover art with Kithgard. Much better than it being something, say, like Gravediggers. So hats off to the visual design team as always. And hats off again to the visual design team because of the goodies that they have laid in here from a visual standpoint. So I am a stickler for having the measurements available, and I love that every single measurement is now on the diagram. I know some folks don't like that. I really do. We have a couple of big themes in the Steamroller packet before I go over the individual items. A couple of big themes. Ambush is very much back on the menu. These scenarios tend to go wide in many cases and want to get the elements as close to edges in certain cases as possible. I looked at it the other day, and the starting point across all of the scenarios in terms of their widest point is at minimum 9 inches away from the edge. Most, 6 out of the 7, actually have an element that starts at 8 inches or less. So it is very close quarters a lot of the times. Scenario terrain is very much in play, and scenario terrain has probably the most significant update in the packet, which is leaders and solos can now score an objective terrain on their own, meaning they do not need a second model to hold it. Otherwise, you need 2 models in objective terrain in order to hold. Only 1 model to contest. There is now an ability in the game that can be on your model or can be given to your model, which is called inconsequential, which means it does not count for scoring and contesting purposes. So these are some pretty big changes. The packet as a whole has a couple of familiar faces that have gotten a little bit of a facelift. So let's start with the scenario that changed the absolute least, which is trench warfare. Trench warfare was a new scenario last year. Scoring wise, it remained completely the same. You get a point for an objective secured. You get a point for, you get 2 points for your opposing player, the opposing player's scenario terrain, which is equal to 2 victory points. You do not score any for your own scenario terrain, and the cash is worth 2. The big change on this scenario is fairly subtle. It's a blink and you'll miss it, which is for the attacker, which is what player 1 has been renamed throughout the packet. We now select attacker or defender, which replaces your player 1, player 2. For the attacker, the starting location of every one of their elements in trench warfare has gone up 2 inches from where it was last year. So your 40 is at 14 inches, your cash is at 22 inches, and your 50 is at 20 inches. The measurements for the defender, i.e., a good old alias player two, is the same as it was. So a couple of subtle things here. This means that the attacker is going to have to extend further in order to contest and score their own scenarios than they had previously. Their scenario elements on this than they had previously. It still does the really cool thing, which is your friendly 40 and 50 for medium and small based infantry. Grants them cover and blast resistance. This is such a cool scenario with a lot of cool a lot of great little elements in it that I absolutely adore. And I think trench warfare has proven to be a favorite last year. I am excited to have it in the packet this year with the minor changes. I also do really like the moving to an attacker defender concept as opposed to player one, player two. I think it really emphasizes the asymmetrical nature of the packet. And we're going to get into more asymmetry previously. So here we have our first introduction of asymmetry where the objectives for player one are a little further up the field than they are for player two. Player two is also definitely a theme in this packet. Player two has some not insignificant advantages. I meaning the defender. The defender has not insignificant advantages on several of these scenarios, if not most, due to the placement of the objectives. So let's talk about two fronts. Two fronts has had a couple of significant changes. First off, and you can see from the diagram, no longer are we horizontal. I'm sorry, no longer are we vertically aligned. We are going to be slightly offset in where the objectives are placed. For the attacker, we've got 8 inches from the left and 8 inches from the right. Left for the 40 and right for the 50, 20 inches up and 19 inches up, respectively. Uh, the defender is going to have the scenario terrain piece. That flag is going to be placed at 23 and 24 up, or 23 from the left, 24 up. It is going to be 17 up for the 50 and 12 over for their 50. And then for the 40, it'll be 12 over from the left for the 40 and 19 up. So a little bit of an offset here. The big change outside of the configuration is the scoring. So you get one for an objective secure, you get one for a scenario terrain, you get an additional one if you score both 40s. You get an additional one if you score both 50s. So no longer do you get the double bonus for scoring both 40s. You get just an additional point as opposed to the previous two. And if you score both 50s again, you just get the 2 points plus an additional one. So the max you can score in a turn is now 7 as opposed to 9, which was the max in the previous packet. Really like the changes here. I like the geometry a lot better here with the offsets. Again, within 8 inches from the terrain side for both the 40 and the 50 here means that you have a great amount of relevance for a model that has ambush, or a unit that has ambush. A lot of utility here to both contest or just start doing some work. But Two Fronts looks very, very good. Again, kind of a fan favorite that has been modernized a little bit. Speaking of modernization and a fan favorite, Wolves at our heels. Wolves at our heels had a little bit of convolution last year in that it wasn't particularly defined as to how many turns it would actually take to get the marker, quote unquote, over the 24-inch line. So they have rectified that and they have changed up the scenario a not insignificant amount. First off, the placement of the 40s is slightly different. The attacker's 40 is going to be 20 inches up the board and 8 inches from the left. The placement of their 50 is going to be 19 inches from the left and 24 inches up. And the flag is going to be situated at 12 inches from the right and 20 inches up. For player two, your flag is going to be at 20 inches up and 12 inches over. Your 50 is going to be at 20 inches up and 19 inches from the right. And your 40 is going to be at 8 inches from the right and 15 inches up. The big change here is one in how the 40 moves and how you score this scenario. So when you score your 40, you get to place a token on your 40. When you go to score your third, as long as your opponent has not scored or does not score their third at the same time, you get 3 additional victory points. So essentially, you need to score your objective one more time than they do, and you will get uh, the additional bonus points. Additionally, when you score and add your token, now if both objectives gain their third token at the same turn, no points are scored in that manner. Scoring for the goal is checked only once per game. There's no limit to the number of VP scored. The other big change here is how the 40 moves. So when you score your objective, because you've secured your 40, you put a token on it. Your opponent may then move that objective, meaning your objective, 3 inches toward your same 50 millimeter objective. So essentially, this is going to be a collapsing scenario in more ways than one. So Wolves advance is still in play, meaning that the kill box is going to advance every turn uh, or every first player turn starting at the third for the kill box. The token, the 40, is going to start to move towards the 50 so that this scenario becomes more of a central play, more of a centralized fight. Again, scoring is essentially the same. 1 point for an objective secured, 1 point for a terrain objective secured, or scenario terrain secured, and 3 points when you get to add your third token. If you both score 3 at the same time, no points are awarded in that manner. And the scoring for this is only checked once per game. So Wolves at Our Heels really does change significantly in this scenario where instead of kind of this push on the flanks, it's sort of the flanks starting to collapse in because those 40s are going to tighten up towards the 50 and you're going to be able to play a more central game. Again, ambushers are going to be very strong here, which I think in all is a net positive for the game, which is really cool to see. All right, onward to what I think is the most controversial one, at least it is for me, which is pressure point. Pressure point is the first time we see an absolute attacker-defender scenario definitively. The attacker is going to get a 50 millimeter objective. That 50 millimeter objective is going to be placed 22 inches up and 23 inches from the right. The defender is going to get 4 flags to place down. Those flags are going to be at 31 inches from their back edge and 6 inches from the left and 20 inches up and 12 inches over from the left and right. And then there'll be a 4th that is 6 inches from the right and 31 inches from player 2's back edge deployment line. What that means is that player 2, the defender, is going to select 4 pieces of scenario terrain that are going to have a significant impact on the game as a whole. So feats like Serafelds, feats like Baranovas are going to be very strong on this when the opposing player is going second, because they can begin to hamper your ability to score deeply into their territory. So depending upon how these tables are set up, there is great chances for the games to end very rapidly and without true skill expression, which is my primary concern. I do also think you can get a very interesting dynamic scenario if the terrain is set up properly. The question is going to be how much onus and issue at scale is it as a tournament organizer and event organizer going to have setting up this scenario when you've got 20 tables, 30 tables to do at a convention, 50 tables to do. Um, if you have to rearrange terrain on 10 of those, how much does that delay your round time? The fact that the before the dice roll occurs for player one or player two, you kind of need to get an idea of where these 8 different flags could be and how that looks from a table perspective. Like there's really a lot of things working against this at the logistical level that bother me personally. Plus the fact that you could just have a non-game uh, based on the matchup that you have and how the lists interact with each other. Scenario terrains are worth 1 and the objective is worth 2 victory points. Now, again, keep in mind that solos will score scenario terrain individually, and so will leaders. However, allowing one player to pick 4 of these scenario terrains, I think, does pose a very interesting problem. I would love to see this be embraced by the community. I really would. I have my concerns as an event organizer, as somebody that understands the logistics of large conventions and how we are generally as gamers when we see something like this that has the potential to be a non-game or a non-player experience, a negative player experience, simply because the terrain did not account for this scenario properly. I also think it has the potential to be really good. It's very interesting. I can see this one being very polarizing, and I hope that people give it a shot. I'm going to try and give it a shot for certain, but I have qualms. So I will stop being a negative nanny, and we're going to talk about high stakes. High stakes is incredibly cool. It is, again, a brand new scenario. It is a little more symmetrical ish. However, it has a bunch of complicated rules interactions that are very cool and really are going to tax list design in a couple of interesting ways. So, on this scenario, you are going to have a central 50 that is owned by player 2. You're going to have for the attack, or is owned by the defender. You're going to have a 40 for the attacker that is 14 inches from the left and 18 inches up. You are going to have a flag for the attacker, meaning a scenario terrain piece that begins life 8 inches from the right and 20 inches up. For player 2, they're going to have a 50 that is placed 22 inches up and 23 inches from the right. They will have a flag that is 8 inches from the left and 23 inches up. And they will have, as the defender, a 40 that is 17 inches up and 14 inches from the right. So, what is unique about this? Well, there is this concept of lighting the fuse. So, at the start of the defender's second turn, at the end of each player's turn, before a player has secured, or if a player has secured the 30 millimeter objective, or sorry, the 50 millimeter objective, that player must choose that objective or either objective terrain, sorry, i.e., scenario terrain, and remove D3 countdown tokens from it. The player cannot choose an objective or an objective terrain that has a 0 count on it. The 50 and the 40s, sorry, the 50 and the 2 scenario terrains each have 5 countdown tokens on them at the start of the game. If neither player has secured the 50, you're going to roll a d3 and do the following on the result. On a result of a 1, you'll remove 1 countdown token from the blue flag, blue objective terrain. From a roll of a 2, you're going to remove 1 countdown token from the red objective terrain. And if you roll a 3 on that d3, you're going to remove 1 countdown token from the 50 objective. So what are we counting down to? Well, we are counting down to when an objective terrain reaches 0 countdown tokens. Models within the objective terrain or within 3 inches of an objective or impassable objective terrain are going to suffer a POW 14 magical blast damage roll. Then you will continue on to scoring. So from a timing perspective, we are going to see that we have secured this objective or not. Then we are going to make the roll. Then this blast damage is going to occur. And then starting on the second player's second turn, at the end of each player's turn, a player earns victory points in this manner. If you secure a 40, you get 1 victory point. If you secure the 50, you get 1 victory point base. If, while you're securing it, it has 0 countdown tokens, you gain an additional victory point. Similarly, the scenario terrain gives you 1 victory point. And then while it has 0 countdown tokens on it, you gain an additional victory point. There is no limit to the number of victory points that can be scored. And again, all of these scenarios will end on turn 7. All of them have kill box, if we have not stated that previously. So this one is really cool. It is really convoluted. There's a lot of rules. I think this one people are going to play wrong a bunch. And it's the one that's going to slow everybody down while they're thinking about it. But I really think this has the potential to be a lot of fun. I've heard a lot of fuss that this feels a little bit more narrative than they would like. But this feels way better to me than Best Laid Plans, and I really enjoyed Best Laid Plans last year. I think it has a big impact on list construction. I think it's going to tax single wound infantry and your objective holding uh, solos in some very interesting ways. I think there are a lot of different ways that this impacts list building, and it's very interesting to me. I look forward to seeing how well the community embraces it, how well TOs embrace it. The big advantage is it's fairly simple to set up. It's going to be hard to have an imbalanced table for it, although I'm sure some will exist. But it mainly is a real consideration in your list construction, and I think that that is really where you can get some juice for the system as a whole. And I like that quite a bit. Let's talk about my favorite scenario that also has some big pitfall potential. But my favorite in the entire list is Fault Lines. And I know I'm in good company on this because I believe this is Jamie Perkins' favorite as well. So I will take this being the lead designer's favorite one this year, at least currently, and take some solace with that. All right, so let's talk about it. In this one, we are going to have 6 scoring elements. Each player is going to have 2 40s, and each player is going to have 1 50. There are no caches, there are no flags in this one. Essentially, we have 2 battle lines drawn that escalate in a diagonal line near the midline. So if you're the attacker, you're going to start 8 inches away from the left with your first 40 and 15 inches up. For the 50, you're going to be 23 inches from the left and 20 inches from your bottom. And you're going to be 25 inches up with your 40 and 8 inches from the right. Again, for the attacker. For the defender, your first 40 is going to be 8 inches from the left and 25 inches up. Your 50 is going to be 20 inches up and 23 inches from the right. and your 40 is going to be 15 inches up and 8 inches from the right. So how do we score this one? This one has a little bit of nuance, and I really love the nuance with it. Objective secured, 1 victory point. A player that has secured 2 of their own objectives, meaning the color that you are, so the red objectives, if you can score 2 of them, you get an additional victory point on your own side. If you have secured all 3 of your own objectives, you get an additional victory point. So this is about holding your line while interrupting your opponent's line. This really has the potential to create some fairly complex situations on turn 2 because the attacker is going to have to invest a portion of their army to prevent a blowout on bottom of 2. So you're going to have to be in a position to not give up so much that the opponent has a very easy time just scoring out the entire 6, which actually account for more because there's 6 you can get, and then if you get all 3 bonus points, you get 9, which could be a really strong blowout scenario if you overcommit or undercommit. So this one is going to have some nuance to it as people learn exactly how much of their army they can or can't provide for the scoring and contesting early with this on both sides of the aisle. I do think second player is heavily favored on this as well as pressure point. Um, but I do see ways that player 1 can gain some leverage and some advantage in this. But it's going to come down to how well you can um, sort of have your initial line disrupt and not disintegrate. So fault lines is going to be a really interesting one to watch. I really like it conceptually. I really like the taxation that it puts on general list construction, and I do think it's going to weigh heavy on the meta because of the amount of troop units that you're going to need for this particularly. But the 50s are still a great consideration here, uh, and I think it gives you a different puzzle than we've had previously. This reminds me of a more advanced version of one from 2 years ago, which I think was Battle Lines that I really enjoyed. That had kind of a similar-ish setup, but it only had a single 40 for each player as opposed to 2 for each player, giving us a total of 4. But yeah, this is the type of design that I like. Generally, it's taking some risk. This and high stakes, I think, are really interesting. I can see where there's going to be some reticence from the community for them. I like the concept of pressure point. Where it loses me is that the defender has all 4 scenario terrains they can select, and I don't know that the placement of the 2 flags that are in the opposing territory are deep enough to not have situations where if it's not explicitly looked for by the TO for all angles, all 4 positions of the flag, that you don't get a situation where all of the objectives don't come screaming back 5 inches deep into the opposing territory uh, for player 2 and into the basic midline or past the midline where the opponent can contest without issue or score without issue, and the first player is forced to scramble up the field, survive an extreme round of shooting because you have to just get to the objectives, and then survive a second round of shooting and are probably out of gas at that point. Um, and now let's talk about the 7th scenario. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we have gone back to a 7 scenario packet. So get those D8s out, get them dusted off. I know I have to find mine. I'm excited to find mine. But payload is back on the menu, but payload has had a significant change, and it's subtle. So again, made to haul works as it does before. We have our 50s that are trying to make it to our opposing players' scenario terrain. But the big nuance here is scenario terrain is now scored at 1 victory point. When you move your 50 into the scenario terrain, you still get the bonus 3 points, and you're going to remove the 50. However, the flag is going to remain, and you're going to be able to remain scoring it. So this is going to be more scory than it was previously. Additionally, I believe the placements of the attacker's 50, i.e. player one's 50s, have gone up 2 inches as well, which brings down the distance between the 40s. It brings down the distance between the starting positions of the flags, and it makes the 50s closer together. So on this, you're going to be 19 inches up and 16 inches from the left on the attacker's flag. The attacker's 40 is going to be 20 inches from the right and 20 inches up. And the 50 is going to be at 16 inches up and 9 inches from the right. For player two, i.e. the defender, their 50 is going to be 9 inches from the left, 16 inches up. Their 40 is going to be at 20 inches up and 20 inches from the left, and their flag is going to be 16 inches from the right and 19 inches from their back. That is your SR 2026. Really fantastic packet as a whole. I am fairly confident in a majority of these scenarios. There are a couple I have some concerns with. Um, there is additional language on sportsmanship, which is good. Death clocks remain the same. They tell you to bring a D8 to determine scenario. Terrain, they have a pretty extensive situation on, and they give a very detailed sequencing of how to set things up via the quadrant method, which is the preferred method for SteamRoller, which is excellent. They talk about recording game results, talk about final standings, and then give you an overview of prizes, including painting. So I think that's a great mention in the article. Great artwork throughout. But yeah, it's a super exciting time for War Machine as a whole. The SR is in an amazing spot. I do have some concerns, like I've said, but I think that those start to go away with more play. We'll see how folks think about them and talk about them. I do know that we are going to be in a situation where, just based on pre-sales, 7-round events at conventions are going to be more common. And as such, I don't know that we can hide from a scenario like um, like pressure point. I don't know that we have the luxury of ignoring something like high pressure or fault lines. I think we have to embrace these and understand the challenges they represent for list building, get excited about those, and really sort of embrace the chaos that we're going to have in the system now. And I think that's a great thing. I think it is great to have the experimentation that we've been seeing from Steam Forged Games. Uh, and the design team as a whole. Ultimately, this update has been fantastic. They've updated so many models, and yet they have consolidated. The update can really be sort of summarized in a couple of bullet points. Effectively, most mat and rats went down where appropriate. Essentially, the average in the game went from a 7 mat to an average of 6. The average rat went down from a 6 to a 5. These are good things for the game. Additionally, ubiquitous feat level spells like Carnage, Windstorm have been reworked slightly. In the case of Carnage, you saw a cost increase. You've seen it locked to specific casters. Um, the caster redesign with the removal of the rack is chef's kiss. I think they knocked it out of the park. All of the casters that I have looked at and reviewed feel fresh. They feel interesting. They feel like they have a unique position. I feel like I have reasons to take everyone and that's both in Shadowflame Shard and in Old Umbry. You can see it in Winter Core. You can see it in Orgoth. You can see it in Storm Legion. You can see it in Dusk. Um, and they have really done a great job of making elite troops feel elite. And they have also done a very good job in some point adjustments. I also love that dual attack was removed in certain instances. For most of the cavalry that had a gun, we now have the assault rule, which I think is just a much better rule. It's much better to have that for cavalry. It really emphasizes that they're going to do the most damage when they charge, which is historically what cavalry does and when it does the most damage. So I like that tie-in to the assault rule. I like prey being less ubiquitous. I like gang being changed to just damage only. Um, I like the fact that it is generally going to be harder to hit without committing additional resources or spending additional resources. I think that's good for the game overall. I think having defense be a stat that matters is very important. I like the rearranging of certain mercenaries. I like the addition of certain mercenaries. Uh, I like that there was so much time and attention paid to the legacy factions in this. A lot of updates to legacy factions. I like that veteran leader was lost in a lot of places and kept in others where it makes sense. Uh, there's a lot of intelligent design to this update, and I think it's strength to strength for our friends at Steamforged Games, and I think they're doing a really good job stewarding this game to being in an incredible place competitively. And I'm very excited for that update mixed with this steamroller and what everybody's going to come up with. So now we are officially in the Wild West period. It is the time to experiment. It is the time to throw out your previous notions because the game is fundamentally different than it was, but yet it is still War Machine. That's the great thing about these updates is while we've had a couple of changes that are absolutely radical, in that we have essentially a full redesign of casters, because the rack has gone away and we've gone to more individualized character-based casters, which I, for one, love, um, coming from the games that I've played previously. I am all about characters mattering, and they have made stats matter in a way that I think is going to be great for the game. And they've not been overly heavy-handed with it in most spots. I think everything feels incredibly playable right now. I think there are definitely some winners and losers in Legacy, but there's always winners and losers in Legacy. I think if you're playing one of the new armies, I think it's a great time to be here. I think we're going to have a major shakeup in terms of the hierarchy of the factions, but I do think we've maintained the fact that I don't think that the win rates are going to be substantially higher across the board than they were previously. I think you're going to see Winter Core step up immensely. I think Winter Core has some very, very strong changes. Baranova is a major concern. I think that she has all the hallmarks of being something problematic. In Dusk, I think Sarafel has some hallmarks of being very problematic with the feat that they've given her. But again, it means control is back on the menu. And with the changes that are in the game now, additionally, the reduction of magic resistance, or the introduction of magic resistance, some of the changes to it, with essentially being star-crossed for magic in a lot of cases, but spell ward staying the same, or sacred ward staying the same, um, is interesting. There's more room in the game for spellcasters now than there was previously. Absolutely. I like the fundamental changes to Orgoth that makes them a more aggressive faction as opposed to a defensive faction, which makes sense for something called Sea Raiders from an army perspective. I think it matches them better. The Brian's rework is amazing. I can't peg that army yet. I don't know if they're great or just good. My assumption is Cosma and Andy Bev are going to prove all of us incompetent, and they're going to run really hard and really hot with them in a way that just hasn't been. But I do think you're going to see a lot of Winter Court. I think Storm Legion's in a really good spot. I think Gravediggers have fundamentally changed. Um, I think they have some very good lists, but they are not the list you were running previously. I think Vargas is not great. I think Buck Hasker, Uncle Buck Hasker, is a trap. I think his spell list is great. He's a 6 focus caster, and I think that that is going to ultimately cause him some major issues because everything he wants to cast is an upkeep, and then he wants to cast Carnage, and Carnage is going to cost him half his stack. So Buck is going to be a tough one to play, but I do think McCoy is better. I think Jakes is as good as ever, and I think that you'll see some surprises there out of uh, out of the Gravediggers. I think they're still a very, very good faction, but they've fundamentally changed. Again, Orgoth's fundamentally changed. Dusk is in a very interesting position. Uh, most of their casters got better. Most of their units did not see the mat and rat reductions that other factions did. Um, so their accuracy bonus is now effectively that they're elf, and elves are very highly trained. They're old warriors, and that is being reflected in how they are playing on the table. So you get that really elite feel, um, and they've gotten some big additions with how their less elite troops are going to interact now with the uh, the soul generators. So I think there's a lot of good things in this game, and I think it's up to all of us to kind of find those things, find what is going to work for us. Have a lot of experimentation. CanCon has just started to go on in Australia. I can't wait to cover that, and then we get to cover the Captain of Cons, Captain Con, which is hyper exciting for us in the States. I think it's going to be an absolute zoo at Captain Con. And I look forward to getting all of the reports in from the boots on the ground there. I hope everybody has safe travels and a wonderful time. Hopefully, you all don't freeze over the next 2 days. I know here where I'm at, it's going to be in the negative 30s, so we get to enjoy that. But thank you all for listening to me. We will be back with even more coverage of everything. But I am excited for SteamRoller 2026. I am super excited for the January update that has just dropped. I think War Machine is in an awesome spot. And friendly reminder that if you are interested in the WTC, that application process is currently live. That'll be live until January the 30th. You need to get your application in if you are interested in going to the WTC for the US. Please do so. Please indicate whether you want to whether we want to attempt for a captain or just a regular opening. And please indicate if you'd like to be in alternate. Alternates are now part of the requirement for the U.S. team. We want to get an alternate on each of the teams that is fully invested with the team. And it will help you as it does. The scoring rubric is fully available for people to look at. And the application process is currently live until January the 30th. Good luck, everybody. Thank you, and have an absolutely wonderful day. And as always, this is Tyrants on the Field just telling you it's an easy game when you roll sixes.